Hey everyone, welcome back. We are in episode 2 of season 3. As you said last week, it's great to be back. We're joined by Joey. How's it going?
Yeah, very good. You, Robin, how are you?
Not too bad. And Brian, how are you?
I'm doing really well. You, Robin?
Yeah, good. We for everyone listening, we had a bit of a mix-up tonight. We've changed our dates from Thursday to Wednesday, and we've also just come back to the podcast, so we're all a little bit rusty. So
keep it behind the curtain, Robin, behind the curtain. I haven't had any dinner, and I'm having a glass of wine instead.
So the show's going to just get better from here.
Yeah.
So we got together on pretty short notice tonight. Before we get into it, Brian, how's your leg going?
It's going pretty well. Getting back into lots of pool and bike rehab and stuff. So yeah, there's a fair bit of bend in it, but it's just bugger all stability. So yeah, it's just about building the muscles back up. But I'm not really in any pain, but I'm still so limited. I'm not going to bitch and whinge about it, but yeah, like in terms of standing up all day, and I am horrendous at forgetting things and leaving things across the other side of the shop, as I mentioned the other week. So I've been doing that the last 4 days I've been in the workshop. But it's been good to be back in, but just having to focus on smaller projects, unfortunately, at the minute. Like even some small projects, you got to start with dressing large pieces of timber, and I can't do that. So it's having to change my whole process.
What do you mean, just because there's too much movement involved in that process?
Just the weight of carrying it, and the twisting and the swing of the timber, the sort of momentum of it. So yeah, having to break timber down into shorter lengths and then dress them, so it's taking me longer. So yeah, it just feels like I'm moving at snail's pace, but it's still good to be in there and doing something. Yeah, getting better.
Just something you mentioned there about you having to walk around the shop and pick stuff up. Mm-hmm. Do you? Well, maybe you've answered this question. Or do you think about setting up your shop so that you've got everything in the right position? It's so funny you mentioned that. The reason I'm bringing this up is just today I was walking across my shop getting my saw, and walking back and getting my mallet, and then walking somewhere else. And in my head I thought, there's so many videos out there about organizing your shop, but I've never really thought about it because the distance is 6 meters at most. I mean, is that something you think you should have in the shop?
I don't know. I think there's two ways you can approach it. Like, I know where everything is in my shop, and it is sort of stuff that's near my workbench tends to be in my hand tools, and like all my blades and things and sharpening tools tend to be at another station. So it's organized into stations more than as in keeping everything at hand, because I'm in 100 square workshops, so it's kind of hard to have everything at hand all the time. But I like that it gets me up to walk. Like, I get 10,000 steps in a day, and that's a good thing to me. I had somebody criticize me once because I put I had a time lapse of me in the workshop, just going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And they criticized me. And I'm like, I did like 14,000 steps that day. I was feeling pretty good. So I don't know. There's obviously efficiencies, and you don't want to be doing that more than you have to be. But I think there's a limit to just being able to sit in a stool and reach and pick everything. Like you can't have every tool at hand. So just keep the ones, like the primary tools, close. And then the specialist ones can sort of live at different stations around the workshop.
Yeah.
I just wonder if it's one of those things that our grandfather did it, so our father did it, so we did it. The tools are in the workbench. Like, for example, I keep the majority of my power tools in their boxes. Now, admittedly, I'm not running a 24-hour workshop, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone, like my router lives in its box. And when I want to use my router, I take the box out, take it out of the box. And I imagine anyone who's got any sort of workflow mindset, they would be horrified by that.
Yeah. I used to do that when I was working on a building site. I would have all my tools in their cases because I could stack them. Each tool had its own little spot in my van, and I could stack it, and I knew if there was an empty spot, there was something missing. But these days, everything, as soon as I buy something, I literally put the case in the bin. Like, Don't need it.
Yeah,
don't need
people
I don't need the shitty little set of drill bits, and I don't need the case.
There's people that are anally retentive out there who will buy those, Joey. Don't throw them away. Seriously,
Waste of
everything
space.
must be organised. It must be the same colour. And yeah, I don't know. I do keep some sustainers, like for dominoes and thing. My domino machine is still in a sustainer. All the dominoes are in a sustainer that clips to it, and it just slides under a workbench. And to me, that's the one thing that sort of needs. Everything else can live by itself, but that's the one thing that I like to make sure that I don't lose the tool. If I had that thing lying loose somewhere, I would probably need to buy a dozen of those tools to get me through a year.
I did that for a while with my domino, and then I got to the point where I was like, every time I'd get it out, I need to find the little adapter for the hose, and then go find a vacuum to plug it in, and then the dominoes are in its own little separate thing, and that's a pain in the butt. So I ended up just making a trolley, and that's the domino trolley. It's got a built-in vacuum.
Yep.
The tools go on one shelf, domino fits on another shelf, and then when I bought the Lamello, it's essentially the same kind of tool, so that has its own little shelf as well. So it's now the domino and Lamello trolley, and we just wheel it to where we're working, plug it in, go for it, roll it back over to the corner. It's finished.
Yeah, there you go. Joey's got the answer. Trolleys.
Yep.
Not tool walls, not cabinets, just a trolley.
If you've got a big enough workshop,
Yeah.
that you can do that.
I was nearly going to build one for my clamps the other day. I got fed up carrying big Bessie clamps across the workshop, and I was like, would it be good to be able to wheel them? But with my train tracks and things, anything that wheels tends to go gadunk, gadunk.
I want to do that. I'd like to have all my clamps on some kind of A-frame rack. Mm-hmm. But the footprint I know that's going to take up is just. Yeah. I'm happy enough with them hanging on the wall just vertically, and I'll just grab them off. Yeah.
Talking about new tools, I just got myself a battery-powered saw, circular saw.
Oh yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah, it's like why have I not done that before?
World-changing to just be able to just pick something up and just cut. And obviously it's a better saw than my 5-year-old $100 Makita that I've been using since day dot. It just gets through quickly. The new blade just zips through it. Cut quality is better, and it's just there's no drama.
Is it?
You just pick it up and you just cut wood.
So left or right-handed?
I had never considered this. I got home and I went, hang on.
Yeah.
And because I set up to cut, and I went,
That's
hang
wrong.
on, something's wrong here.
No,
So-
it's not that you picked wrong. It's just that they come left-handed, and they've only just now promoting right-handed versions as like a special thing. Like finally, we bloody worked out that people don't want to be looking on the wrong side of the blade.
So I was trying to work this out. Now it's going to be hard to explain this to everyone, but my Makita, the widest part of the plate when I'm holding on my right hand was towards me, and the guard of the blade
It's away from you.
it covered the blade entirely, so I couldn't see it.
Yeah.
Now this is the opposite way around. So now when I'm holding my right hand, I can see the blade, and for a couple of days I couldn't work out what the deal was, and then I thought, maybe this is a right-handed saw because I can see the blade, so I can, I'm eyeballing it the whole time.
No,
Is that
it's the opposite?
Is
No.
that the go?
No, it's the opposite. You should have the saw so the blade is away from you, and you look over it, and what you do is you look over the saw and see the front cutting edge. So typically the waste side is towards you and the good piece is away from you, and the weight of the saw is all towards you, and that's how we would use it on a building site. And then when they brought out the first battery ones, they're all left-handed, and it completely stuffs up your balance, and especially if you've been using a skill saw for 10 years on a building site, and you just have this instinctive reflex of how your body has to stand to hold the saw, and then it's completely opposite. You can't even cut a straight line with it. It's very, very difficult to change to a left-handed saw.
Yeah, it threw me completely. But why would they
don't know.
do that? Like, it's
makes
such
no
a bizarre thing. Surely studies have shown there are more right-handed people out there.
I can't
Yeah,
work
that's
out
weird.
why they bought them all lefties. For the first probably 5 years they were all left-handed. It doesn't make any bloody sense to me.
Now I'm pissed off. Battery powered saws suck.
The best thing about them is you can take them to your timber yard and you can just hack your pieces down to length when you're picking out your timber. It's great. But some places don't like you doing that, but yeah, that's another discussion.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so like when I shoot down to get some timber, I can just chuck it in the back of the car. Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah.
So you got a DeWalt, was it? Is that what I saw?
Yes. So I'm working on a project and I needed to be able to make some 45-degree cuts. Now we've talked about the track saw in the past, and I'm probably still going to go that route. But this was I need something to cut a 45-degree angle. I just went out and bought the nearest saw that I found. So it's not the expensive one with the big blade. It's the bottom of the range one.
Yeah. Did you have other DeWalt tools?
Yeah. And that's the other thing. So I've got.
So you had the batteries.
Yeah, the driver, reciprocating saw.
Yeah.
I've got all of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, didn't have to buy
that
batteries.
Makes sense. So the skin's much cheaper. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, if for everyone listening out there, when I changed from a quarter drill to a battery drill, it was amazing. When I went from using a battery-powered reciprocating saw to a quarter to battery, it is just as cool for the circular saw. I didn't think it was going to be that groundbreaking, but man, it is. Go get yourself one.
Yep.
So, Joey, you put out a video this...
Finally.
Yeah.
Oh, did you?
This week?
I haven't seen it yet.
It was a couple
it's probably not
days
promoted because there's no monetization on them now, so Google's probably not giving anyone notifications.
I did notice that when there was no video on or no ad on it, and after I talk, I thought, there he is. That's it. He's doing it. Cool.
Yeah. I haven't got through them all, but yeah, most of them don't have any ads on them.
So I guess it's a good thing then, Brian, that you didn't watch the video, because then we can discuss it in more detail. But I just had a couple of questions.
Sure.
The first one was about, you talked about doing the MDF doors, how when you notch out a solid panel, it tends to move more than a 5 panel. Yeah. Does that consistently happen, or does it depend on the MDF that you get?
Okay, so we'll just clarify quickly. Robin's talking about if you're making a cabinet door panel in, say, a shaker style, most of the big factories these days will just take a solid piece of 18mm MDF and route a pocket out of the front, say 5mm deep, and typically then they'll just put some thermowrap plastic on top of that or have it sprayed with lacquer. What happens with MDF is that you're changing the surface tension quite a lot on one side of the panel, and so you end up having a bow in the panel. Typically, what way will it bow? Typically it will concave towards that
out
pocket.
of the cabinet, the cabinet.
Yeah. And depending on how the squareness of the panel will kind of affect it too. If it's longer one way than it is the other, it can change how the bow kind of presents itself. And so I did a kitchen a few years back, and the client specifically wanted this thermowrapped doors on their kitchen, and so I was like, okay, I'll get the company just to make the doors, and I'll install them. And every one of them was bowed, and I've actually got one that was kind of made the wrong size. So I've got it as a sample in my workshop, and it is sitting flat with panels on it in like my samples bin, and I pull that out to show people, and it's just consistently bowed, even if it's sitting flat with weight on it. It just bows, and I've seen it.
Sorry, but surely, if that was the case, people would be up in arms. I mean, these people wouldn't be able to sell them.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's a you're right. That should be the case. I don't know how. I don't know what that process is. If there's some dastardly little secret that these people have to hide the bow. It's not much, but it's enough where I look at it and go, well, it's not flat, and it costs twice as much as what I can make a door for. Do you really want that?
Yeah.
So my point was that if you make a true 5-panel door, even out of MDF, I actually find that gluing a shaker door up in a 5-panel piece in MDF works really well, because the MDF just glues back together and becomes one piece of MDF again. And that panel is a true internal panel, glued fully in place, and as long as you clamp it up flat, it's going to stay flat. Don't have many issues with them warping.
No grain direction,
No, there's no grain direction. You can just glue the whole lot up. We put tongue and groove joints on the rail and stiles, and the whole lot is just glued together, and it just becomes one piece of MDF again. And it's and you have that shaker panel on both sides of the door, which is really nice. When you open the door, it looks the same on the back.
Yeah,
which is
meant. And your what would you call him? The person helping you out, not your apprentice.
My assistant.
Your assistant, that's the word you use. Your assistant. I noticed when the join went together, the mortise and tenon wasn't the tightest that I've seen, but I guess because you've got that internal panel, it's going to be so solid that you're never going to have to worry about that. You could be a little bit more flexible about that.
The actual joint. Yeah, the actual joint is pretty tight. It's just the depth of the tongue. The depth of the tongue and groove is never spot on, just so we don't have any issues with the tongue being too long, like
bottoming out. Yeah,
you don't want to have it just be like just too long, and you end up with a gap on the rail and stile. So typically we'll leave it short by a bit, and that little gap just gets filled up with glue. But you're right. As soon as you glue in a full panel, I actually saw some YouTuber showing off how he built a 5-panel door, but went to great lengths to show that you had to have the panel floating and put these little rubber balls in the groove to stop the panel rattling and stuff. But he used a veneered MDF panel. And I was like, just glue it in.
It's not going to move anyway.
Yeah. It's the perfect time to glue it in, because actually what that does is mean that you don't need to have large tenon in the rail and stile, because the square shape of the panel is like a diaphragm brace, and it's not going anywhere. You're just making one big square panel. So glue the hell out of them, as long as it's not solid timber.
Now, what about if you took that idea and instead of, and I'm not saying this is necessarily going to be better, but excuse me, if you just took your panel or your four outside pieces and you glued them onto a solid panel. So instead of the panel floating, you just glued it on. Would that defeat the point, because those outside panels will interact with the big sheet?
Well, I tried that actually recently, because I was going through this dilemma of how do I make lots of shaker style panels really quick. And I actually did a project where we used 12mm plywood and just cut it to the full size of the door, like we usually would if it was a flat panel door. And then we took 6mm ply and just glued and pinned it on the front to create that border. And it was reasonably quick, and they seemed to have stayed straight, but there was actually more work by the time we filled the pinholes and dealt with the plywood edge and having to put edging all the way around it for a painted finish. It was actually way quicker just to use MDF. But if someone didn't want to use MDF, then what I do is use solid pine frame and a plywood panel. The problem becomes that with paint, you end up, the client has to decide if they want to see any wood grain coming through the paint. And that's really what it comes down to. And more I'm actually getting, can we have a smooth finish? So I end up having to use MDF, even though I'd really prefer to using plywood.
Yeah.
As I haven't seen the video yet, you outsource the painting of them, do you, Joey?
No,
you do it
in-house? In-house, yeah. Oh. Typically we roll everything.
Really?
Yeah.
Using water-based paint, or...?
Yeah, water-based resin Lustre-Acryl, so it's like a semi-gloss finish, waterborne enamel. So we always have a project on the go. So recently had a client come in. This is a lady who wants a massive house load of cabinetry done, and she saw a piece we were just finishing and said, "That looks awesome. That's exactly what I want." I said, "What's actually just rolled paint. We didn't spray it this way. It's not twice the cost of regular paint jobs. And she was super impressed. And so we get that quite a lot where people say, "Oh, good spray job," and I'm like, "Oh, thanks, I rolled it on." We're pretty good at doing what we do, and I typically wouldn't. Like, if people specifically want a sprayed finish from me, if they ask for lacquer, these days I'll tell them to go somewhere else, because I don't want to deal with panels that can't be altered at all. There's nothing worse than having, like, it's like working with glass at that point. You can't take a shaving off it. You never know what's going to happen on site, even though you shouldn't need to. It's really nice knowing that if I have to, I can just plane the edge off the door and throw a couple more coats of paint on. It's very easy.
To get that kind of finish, you go with a short nap roller, or what do you?
Yeah, really short.
Yeah.
What we've been doing now is using a 10 mil, a really long roller for primer, and we'll throw on 2 coats of primer almost immediately. As soon as it's touch dry, we'll just put the other second coat of primer on and get a really deep, solid white base. Then we will orbit all that with 240 grit and block it back till it's dead smooth. And then you can use a 4 mil nap, like a really short nap roller, and 2 coats of top coat on top of that, and you're pretty much done.
From my experience, the shorter nap becomes, you may get a smoother finish, but it's not as consistent. I found myself I started with the shorter nap as well.
Oh, yeah.
Now I'm up to the 10, 11 mil.
For finish?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly, and maybe it's just a preference. I'm putting on some water-based poly on a blanket case, blanket chest at the moment.
Yeah.
And using a thick nap for that, you get a nice textured feel. Now, me personally, I quite like that. Maybe that's just the thing that you want. Yeah. You'll never get the glass finish, but I find with the heavier nap, it's more consistent, because with that thin nap, the edges of the roller start to come into it more, where you start getting that sort of build up on the edges.
That's true. We have kind of a system where we don't get any roller edges. I prefer not to have that textured look, and I think that's why we get comments about, is this sprayed? Because you really can't feel that there's any lump. Yeah, I know. I don't want to say lumps, but there is like a overall texture. Rough. Yeah. So the longer the nap, the bigger the texture. So the theory then goes: the shorter the nap, the less texture you get. Temperature does start coming into play at that point. If it's too hot and the paint's flashing off too quickly, it's not going to get a chance to flatten out anyway. So middle of summer is not great for painting. Kind of the 2 off seasons, kind of spring and autumn, are the best times for painting here, at least, because the paint gets a decent chance to flatten out and sit for kind of 20 minutes before it actually starts flashing off. Otherwise, in summer, it's drying within 4 or 5 minutes, and you can barely keep a wet edge on the piece.
And would you consider using any of that special cabinet paint?
That special cabinet paint, what does that mean?
Was that a bit too vague? So you get, obviously, is yours
like a 2-part? You're talking about like a 2-part lacquer or something?
No, not even that complicated. Is yours an enamel, or is it just an acrylic? Or no, that's
it's a water-based enamel, and it's designed
enamel, right?
For cabinetry, front doors, window, timber window sashes and stuff like that.
Okay, so it's not just the normal stuff you'd put on the wall.
No. That would be like, it's hard. I can't really even speak in like colloquial terms, because every country seems to have their own term for like what type of paint goes where. So I find it very difficult to understand what the Yanks are talking about when it comes to paint, because they've got so many abbreviations and different categories of paint, whereas I think most of them are talking about the same thing. Like, you've either got true enamel paint that is terps cleanup, or you've got a waterborne enamel, which is water-based cleanup. And I don't think there's many variances in there. There obviously is different categories of paint, but you basically can narrow them down to those 2.
Yeah.
I'd say a lot of it is branding exercise as well.
Yeah.
Like it'll be the big box store just putting what they'd sell in a 20-litre tin in a 1-litre tin and jacking the price.
Yeah.
Cabinet paint.
Yeah, calling it something else. Yeah.
So I don't have a lot of experience with enamel. My whole house is just painted with wall paints. Everything gets the same thing. But for my cabinets in my kitchen, I went to the home center and I got a tin of label cabinet paint.
Right.
And it's got a very different smell. It's got a very strong smell. It's very thick. And I put it on with one of the foam rollers.
Mm.
It dries like stone. It is the hardest paint I've ever used. It's incredible. Now, I don't know if that would be different to enamel. Water cleanup.
Okay.
Water cleanup. And it's you do 2 or 3 coats, and it feels like the thermo-wrapped stuff.
Right, yeah.
Now, as I say, I don't have a lot of experience with enamel, so maybe enamel is there, but maybe it feels the same. But in my head, I imagine it would
sounds
be
good.
the next level after enamel in terms of its strength. But, geez, it's expensive. It's properly expensive. I think a little 500ml tin was between $30 and $50. It was substantially more than getting some enamel.
That's interesting. So, say this might be an interesting little price thing. What is a litre of paint cost you like what you would usually throw around your house?
So
if you can buy it by the litre.
I'm bringing it up right now so we can see, because as I say, I just paint everything. I just paint everything with the stuff that you put on the wall.
The stuff I use, the Resine Lusticro, with somehow I have a trade discount at a paint shop. I pay $87 a litre.
Okay, so then actually it's not that expensive. So, yeah.
87 a litre?
Yeah.
That seems really expensive.
And that's enough. A litre will do, at the moment I'm doing this fancy front door for a villa. It's quite big, but and easily get 3 or 4 coats on each side of the door and probably have some left over from a litre. So typically I buy paint by the 4 litres and I'm paying about $230 or something for a 4 litre.
Yeah.
I can't find the exact one, but it's around $50. I remember that.
Right.
A litre, yeah. Anyway, it's just a super paint, and it's...
it sounds an interesting paint. You should flick me what it is, and I'll see if I can find it and do a test.
Yeah.
Do you reckon, like, if they formulated it so it's got some etching property into it, is that why they're calling it cabinet paint? So you can just paint over anything without having to pre-prime or...
So you get the same brand with a primer, and that's the one that you can paint on tiles or whatever. So
it's not Zenza, is it?
No. I think is it White Knight? I thought it was White Knight. But they're the same brand. I painted my kitchen melamine with this stuff, and it's actually held up. It's held up pretty well. I mean, it's never going to be as good as getting it off the shelf.
You painted over melamine.
Over melamine.
It must have some kind of etching property to it.
Especially the primer.
Yeah. Well, it was you sanded, put the primer on, and then you put the paint on.
It's typically, if you're going to paint on weird surfaces like that, the only thing I know that does that is the Zenza primer. Zenza do a bunch of different stuff, but one of their primers is actually meths-based, or essentially it's shellac-based primer. And that stuff, you will stick to anything. You can paint glossy tiles if you want. But it dries in about 3 seconds, and your paintbrush will go hard. And, like, as soon as you finish, the paintbrush is dead. But then you can paint on top of anything you like.
Yeah. Okay, it's called laminate paint.
Huh.
And it's by White Knight. And it comes in a 1 litre tin. And I paid $57 for it. Yeah.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
If it's that hard.
really cool. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's not going to be as good as if you were buying the cabinet doors pre-finished from the factory, but for refinishing and then obviously, Joe, what you're doing, I mean, it'd be perfect for that.
I will have to think about that.
Anyway,
Actually,
we're woodworkers,
yeah.
we're not painters.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, the Joey Chalk painting masterclass is concluded.
I had two questions about that video, Joe. The first one was about those doors. The second one was about the plug that you pulled through the cabinet.
The power cable?
Yeah. What are the regulations for that? So if anyone out there is building a cabinet and they want to put a plug into the cabinet, what do you have to make sure you're doing?
I'm not sure that really matters. So obviously, if you're working with the electrical circuits in the house, I'm pretty sure that Australia has a similar rule to New Zealand, is that you can do the work if it's your own house. You're allowed to work on your own circuits.
Oh, no, you can't do that, yeah.
You can run, so over here you can run your own circuit, but you can't hook it up to the circuit board in the house and make it live.
Can't energize it.
So otherwise, anything, typically you would get a registered electrician to touch anything that is electrical. Certainly if you want to keep your insurance intact, that's what you'll do.
I mean, more from the perspective of when you're incorporating it into your project. When I renovated, when I had a company renovate about a year ago, they put in some PowerPoint, and I said to them, I'm going to put a cupboard over this PowerPoint. And they said to me, that's fine, as long as you can access the PowerPoint. Mm-hmm. Now, you guys were essentially covering up that PowerPoint with another PowerPoint. So
No. Well, so maybe it looked a bit interesting. So there's two ways we go about doing PowerPoints in media cabinets. Generally, it's media cabinet. So either there's existing PowerPoints in the house, which is typical scene that we find. And generally, what you find when you unscrew a PowerPoint and pull it off the wall, it stays wired to the plug, and generally there's 150 mil of slack in the cable. So what you can do is drill or cut a hole that is the right size, a square hole in the back of your cabinet, and just pull the plug through on an angle through the hole, twist it, screw it back on to the inside.
So you're not even
cabinet.
rewiring it or anything?
No, all you're doing is shifting it from the face of the wall to the face of the cabinet.
Yeah, that's what I've done on my cabinets at home.
That's typically what we'll do. Otherwise, if it's a new build, like in that one where the owner had actually, in my video, the owner had run a cable, and all we had to do is drill a hole, and then he's going to fit the switch to the inside of the cabinet. So typically on a new build, that will happen. We'll just drill a bunch of holes, the cables come through, and then the sparkies can fit the plug onto the inside of the cabinet. As long as I've got something decent to screw it back to, there's no problem, because there's no difference between you screwing to the plywood wall of the cabinet or the plasterboard of the house.
But then would that cabinet need to be attached to the wall?
Absolutely.
It can't be something. It can't be something that you can.
It can't be freestanding.
Freestanding, yeah.
Certainly here there's rules about if you're installing something permanent like a TV unit, a bookcase, it can't fall over in an earthquake. So it's got to be attached to the wall firmly enough that it's going to hold itself up. I know you can't really, there's no quantifiable, how strong is the earthquake and how heavy is the thing and how much inertia does it have, and you can't work this stuff out, but you've got to give it your best shot at putting some screws into some studs.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I just think it's really interesting for anyone who's thinking of making a project where they put the PowerPoint inside, because it's the slickest finish.
Yeah, I mean, you think about how many kitchen islands there are with PowerPoints on the side of them or underneath them or in them. These days you have pull-out drawers, and the PowerPoint's in the back panel of the drawer, and you leave your stuff charging in the drawer, and then there's a piece of cable that is slack in the back of the cabinet, and it just moves in and out with the drawer.
And that's why I ask. I would imagine from a risk management, from an insurance perspective, all of these new places that these plugs are going in, it must be a nightmare. Because
what about LEDs everywhere?
Yeah, well, yeah.
I mean, they're only 12 volt generally, but still, it's power. I'm sure
They got to go somewhere.
I'm sure an insurance company will say, there was a spark.
Do you know? I'm not sure if they have them in New Zealand. Do you know Zetter? They do like a range of sockets, really nice, minimal, low-profile sockets.
Not off the top of my head.
Give those guys a look. They're really, really nice.
Are they for like pop-up style ones, or like just
I've
really
seen people
nice
put them
on
into
display?
bedside tables, into island benches and things. Just a really simple design. Yeah,
Very cool.
No free ads, but yeah.
No.
Really some good stuff.
I really like whenever people want like a pop-up PowerPoint. I really like the ones they use for in floors. They often use them in like commercial buildings, and you have like this little aluminium or steel box with a flip-up lid, and they're just so like well made because they're for industrial settings, but they're so simple because of that as well. And it's just a nice little steel box, and it fits really nice in most kitchens.
Yep.
Yeah, the problem is you also get some cheap and nasty versions, which, having worked in commercial spaces before, when they're cheap and nasty, they're awful. So when I did my kitchen island, I ended up just putting the PowerPoints on the side, because you could just use a regular PowerPoint, because I went through some of the options of those pop-up ones, and I could just see in my head that piece of aluminium popping up and just wobbling, and then you're holding it, trying to plug something in because it's fighting back against you. Yeah. These look amazing, though, Brian. I was just having a quick look. You could tell by the company's website the level that their product is going to be at.
That's cool.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
They do some nice stuff. I've got one for you. So, you know the way I'm the kind of the guy that gets upset about IP and stuff.
Yes.
So I had...
Here comes a rant.
Mini rant. No, just curious. Like, having had our discussion last week on what is the point of YouTube.
Yeah.
So I had an Instagram follower of mine contact me. So shout out to Sechi Design, I think his name is. And he found, or it turned up in his feed, it was somebody doing a morbidly obese version of a pinch bench with a planter instead of a concrete leg. And I'm like, oh yeah, that looks pretty fat and ugly. But I was like, what do I do? Because I don't care that they're making it. Like, all they need to do is just add a bit of credit, and that's fine.
Well, do you want credit for that, though?
I want them to acknowledge that they have seen my work and that has influenced it, and that's enough for me. Like, but it's a funny thing. Like, their stuff is obviously, it would be in the kind of DIY zone rather than in the proper furniture. They're obviously not selling the pieces. Mm. And if they were selling the pieces, you know, I'm like, I'll offer some kind of cease and desist.
Yeah.
Whether it might just be a threat, but
in the DIY world, it's almost complimentary to you rather than
precisely.
The
like,
opposite.
I have people contact me and they say, "Can I make this?" And I'm like, I'm flattered the fact that they've taken the time to ask me. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Make sure you send me some photos when you're done, and I want to see it. And that's cool. Like, I have zero problem with that. But when it's a YouTuber making stuff and making it quite quickly, and ending up with 100,000, 200,000 views, and they're actually generating revenue from something that is heavily based on your design. I just wanted to see how you guys would feel about, like, the implications.
It's similar to music, I suppose, in that sense.
It is, yeah.
It's similar, but I not entirely, but...
I reckon music's a lot easier to
prove.
To get away with. No, I'd say to get away with. It's, because something like what you're talking about it's because yours isn't a 3-chord progression, which is used a million times over. Mm-hmm. Yours is a one-off thing. It's only ever been built once. Which, obviously, I won't ask who the person was. Where was this YouTuber from?
Germany.
Australia? Germany.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. And do you think that there's any potential ties that this person could have to you?
Oh, they've definitely seen my piece.
The reason I ask is
but
because I'm playing devil's.
Yeah.
I'm playing devil's advocate here. Is there any chance that this person has just come up, either just come up with a design, by chance, or they've subconsciously seen your design and they haven't done it on purpose? I'm
totally open to the fact that things can be designed on one side of the world and done on the other side of the world without having any tie to them whatsoever. Like, I know that there are, but it was the angles were identical. It's not like it was a rough sort of interpretation of the format. It was the same thing but made fatter. And
so your work's been in a bunch of different media.
Yeah.
Again, to play devil's advocate, it's been quite easy for someone, especially who speaks a different language, to see a picture in some, say, English magazine, and they don't read a word of English, and they're from Germany, and they say, oh, that's a nice picture, I'll just make that, because I'm never going to see this, no one's ever going to see it, who knows, they can't even read who it is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely a problem.
That's my question. I'm like how much of a problem is that when they are generating revenue off it?
Yeah, that's a difficult question.
Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, I know they're not earning that much money off a couple of 100,000 views, but say it is I know there's a whole host of woodworking channels that just knock off other people's videos and make a ton of money. I just thought it was an interesting thing to bring up.
Because you could contact them.
I did contact them, yeah. I contacted
them. Did you? Okay.
And I said something along the lines of, I don't mind, you've done it and that's okay, but I think you should offer some credit to the people that inspire your videos. And they instantly commented back and said, not a problem, sorry about that. And they added me into the bottom of the notes section on their YouTube. And I'm like, I don't think I've ever read a notes section on YouTube, but at least there was something, and that was an acknowledgement to me that they were aware of my work.
So they knew exactly who
this
you were.
was not,
Right.
There's no point playing devil's advocate when you're wrong.
No.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
But fair play to them for not saying, "Oh, we don't know your work" or anything. But it was just another moral quandary about YouTube.
I'm sure that happens so many times.
Yeah.
A second on YouTube that there's too many to even police it.
I've told you guys, I don't, maybe I haven't, I thought I may have, the wireless charging bedside table that I made.
Yeah, you did, yeah.
I mean, I built that, and within 2 months, everyone was doing one. And again, I'm not a huge influencer, but the fact that video went to the top of Reddit, pretty sure that would have had a hand in it, because it was something that was doing well. But again,
it's just when you put anything out in the public domain, like it's just one of those things.
You've got to go to bed at night thinking, I did that. No one has to know about it. No one has to know that it was me, but I feel validated knowing that I did that. Mm-hmm. Guess that's all you can do. Or you can send everyone a message and say, just so you know, you should really be crediting me. That's really cool, though, that they picked up on it.
Yeah, it was good.
If you were to sell plans for it, how much would you need to sell your plans for to be happy that someone would then go and make a replica of what you made?
Yeah,
you don't have to answer, but it's like a.
People have asked me about the plans, and I'm like,
because I was just thinking, like, I sell the odd plan for stuff, and I don't. It's not completely not about making money. I should just put them out for free because it's a waste of time to have a little shop on the website. But like, because there are people who make a lot of money on YouTube, through YouTube, selling plans for stuff. And so that you could, because you're selling a plan, you're essentially saying, I hereby grant you the right to make this thing, copy my design. And I guess that would be an interesting question for you to ponder, is like, what would it take if I were to sell the right for someone to use the likeness? What would that be worth to you?
I think if I transitioned into just a content maker, I would feel comfortable doing it. But if I'm a production furniture maker,
you want
who's trying to sell a product, and I'm selling a plan that
it's different, eh?
Like, I don't know. When I've had my work knocked off in the past, I'm able to tell the difference between it. Like, it looks different. The proportions are slightly wrong. The joinery is slightly wrong. Whereas if I sell my plans, like, it's going to be very, very difficult if it's made right, very difficult for me to tell the difference, never mind the consumer. So I don't know. I had thought about plans years ago for a while, and I'm like, how much can you actually sell them for? What would people pay for them? And what's
I'm
the
not
value
suggesting
to
you
my
do
business?
it at all. I think it's probably not the best move for anyone who's trying to, forge their own design work. It seems like counterintuitive to sell your designs for a few bucks.
I reckon there are probably exceptions to the rule for things like chairs. Like, a chair to me is a very low margin thing.
Yeah.
Because there's so much time that has to go into it. Whereas a lot of woodworkers see it as a rite of passage and want to build a chair, but either don't have the skills to design it, don't understand the proportions, don't understand the joinery that is involved to create like something that is going to last as a chair. So something like that, I could see it being worthwhile. If I design that chair, just make a quick prototype of it, sell the plans, and say you sell the plans at, I don't know, $20 or $30 or something like that, and it's out there as a legacy thing forever, and even if it's generating you, I don't know, $200 or $300 or something like that a year, that's probably as much profit as I would get for making a set of chairs.
It's you're probably earning more off selling plans for chairs than you would if you make chairs.
Yeah.
I mean, when I make a set of chairs, and I dread people asking me about them, because, well, it's usually a pretty quick conversation. Can you make chairs? Yes, they're roughly about $1,200 each. Okay, see you later.
Yep. Bye.
And let's put like a minimum of 6. Like, it's only that price if you get 6 or more.
Yep.
I mean,
what goes into your plans, Joey? I've thought about it, but I'm not sure what people think.
For an actual plan to sell?
Yeah, what's considered a plan?
Well, man, mine are bare minimum because I feel like if you don't have some basic wherewithal to like understand 3 dimensions, you're probably in the wrong game.
It's not just like a shopping list, and
I just give like a very basic cut list. Like I just used like Adobe Illustrator, drew some sheets of plywood and like just drew up where you need to cut different parts from to actually get what the parts you need from the piece of plywood. That's a difficult thing to do for people who aren't used to cutting up plywood, is that you cut the piece you want first without thinking what the offcut looks like. And once you get your head around mentally looking at a sheet of plywood and going, I need that part, but I'm actually going to cut the smallest part first off the very end of my sheet, and then I'm going to cut a little strip off the side, and then I'm going to cut the sheet in half, because then it gives me all the parts I need at the right size, rather than just cracking into cutting the part you need and actually then having to buy an extra sheet. Just takes a bit of thought. So that's what I give people, and then I just give a very basic description of part A is screwed to part B, and if you can't work that out, see you later.
I'm currently on your website.
Yeah, it just seems like
plans, and I'm going to knock it off into a YouTube video.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. It just seems like a lot of work. A lot of work to put the plans out.
If you're doing proper plans, if you're doing plans like you would get from any professional, like, cabinets are on my brain. So if you would go to a custom kitchen company, they're going to give you this like dossier of line drawings that you can't understand. And I think a lot of people are producing that kind of plan and really fine detail. In that way, because for the time it takes to make a really, really detailed plan is not that much compared to you then being able to sell that really detailed plan for an extra margin because yours is so detailed. But remembering you only have to draw it once, in detail, and then you get to sell it at a higher profit margin because it's a better plan. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a better project or it's even a good design. It's just a better plan. It looks better.
Speaking of plans, I am trying to get a carport built. And carports are expensive. Jeez. A 6x7 gable roof, nothing fancy. I've gone to a draftsman who's drawn it up for me.
Okay.
Which, for anyone wanting to build, if you're going to get a draftsman, realize that they can't tell you the cost of the project, so you could just come up with a very expensive set of drawings and then walk away. Spent like $1,500 just on drawings. Beautiful drawings, but I may not even use them in the end. So a 6x7 meter carport, standard gable roof, color bond roof, between 14 and 16 grand.
Is that so? That's not any kind of kit set.
No, this is I should have probably mentioned this. This is what I'm basing it on. To get a kit for about the same size is between 7 and 8 grand.
And that's like all steel, like what you always see in Australia, like it's just steel. I don't know what you call them, but everything's just kind of screwed together, steel bits, powder coated.
RHS, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I don't want because I just think they look just daggy.
Yeah.
I don't like them.
I don't like.
They're
typically,
functional,
the kits look a bit crap.
But yeah,
So
but
what
do I
if
want to
you-
spend an extra?
Yeah. So what if you bought a kit, and then because I know they've got those awful posts, but what if you then go put some timber around the posts and pretty it all up, put a ceiling underneath it, and actually like dress it up and make it look like you've just got a steel skeleton, and then you clad it like it was a regular building, and actually make it look pretty, and spend an extra $1,000 on materials, and still save yourself what $6,000.
That's the route I'm going to look at. So either doing that or, and this will depend on what the contractors are okay with, saying to the guys, you put in the posts, weld what needs to be welded, I'll do all of the...
That's what I do.
And this is what I wanted to ask you about, Joe. You probably got a bit more knowledge in this, Brian. I'm not sure if you know. Here in Queensland, under the Queensland Building Code, I can build anything up to a project that's roughly 11 grand. That's what I'm allowed to do.
It's based off price.
Yeah. Anything, which is crazy because I've got two quotes, one's 16 and one's 14. So what does price mean? But now if I do part of the build as just a Joe Schmo, how would that affect the builder's insurance or the builder's liability and my insurance?
Pretty sure insurance probably isn't so much an issue as that the builder is licensed and he has to sign off his work as being up to code, and he would have to sign off any work you did if it was inside the structural envelope, I suppose, as being up to code, and he may not be allowed to or able to if you're not part of some registered building kind of association. So I would say that most builders would say, we're going to do all the stuff and you can stick out of it, and that's why I would say to a builder, do the stuff that you have to do, bare minimum, and then I'm going to spend my sweet time making it look pretty.
Yeah. Because it's such a simple design, there's not really because that's what I've said to everyone who's come through the quote. Let me do what I can do. I'll dig the holes. I'll do. But because it's such a simple project, there's not much I can do.
Most builders would probably let you do that. Depending unless like most builders would let clients dig holes. The problem is most clients who say that don't know how to dig a hole, and they can't do it in an hour when the builders said allowed an hour to dig the holes, and they're still doing it at lunchtime.
And these are 1,200 deep.
Well, that's the thing. Most builders are probably
zone.
just going to rent a digger and drill it.
Yeah,
and so
it's like every episode of Grand Designs you've ever seen where the client wants to get involved and they're working as a surgeon and they quit their job for 12 months to dig holes in a cold, wet English countryside as opposed to just letting somebody dig the hole for them.
Yeah, you're not saving any money.
When I moved to Australia, I didn't have a job. So I arrived and I moved into a house share and I just literally sat on the couch looking for work. And I had a library near me and I just went and rented Grand Design DVDs, and I just watched episode after episode after episode. Kevin is the presenter.
I've met Kevin. I had a night out with Kevin in Melbourne.
Oh, cool.
Right. He seems like a
They
cool
used
guy.
to have an event called Grand Designs Live
That's right.
that I exhibited at.
He came here.
Yeah. He's a really nice guy. Good fella. But don't watch the latest series. I think it's series 17. There's an episode in Devon that will give you the greatest dose of anxiety you've ever had in your life from a television program.
Okay.
Just a client who plows headstrong into something that he shouldn't have, hired a crap architect who gave him shit advice, and he just kept going and going and going and going and borrowing more and more until the bank said no, and then he borrowed from hedge funds.
Oh, is this the guy on the cliff?
Yep, that's the one.
Oh my god. Yeah, built a high, like a floating road off the cliff to get to his, and it just all went to shit.
Yeah, we won't spoil the ending for anybody who hasn't seen it, but it is brutal. Devon, I think, was the episode. So yeah, enjoy. Don't watch it if you're feeling slightly emotional or hungover. Or planning on building a house.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll look into the kit idea. I guess that's maybe that's an idea.
A good way to save money. It's not going to give you the exact look that you're probably after, but compared to obviously making something from scratch, when a builder's on site measuring each piece of wood and cutting it to length, that takes longer than it does when everything's just ready to screw together and it comes in one pack on the back of a truck. And typically those guys, like over here, those companies who make those kit set carports and garages, they'll do a fully enclosed 6x7 garage in about 5 days. They're finished. So
So the
carport would probably be 3 days work done, finished, and then there you go.
Well, you can get the kit itself, so I can get the kit.
You could do it.
$7 to $8 grand and do it myself.
Yeah.
Or it's generally about another $1,000 to get someone to build it.
Right.
They reckon. Yeah. Yeah. We'll see how that goes. Yeah. All right. I reckon we will leave it there for tonight. So before I get into the outro, every week or every episode I say, please leave us a rating on iTunes. It really does help us out. Some of the reviews I've obviously it's been a while since we've come back, for season 3. Tonight I was going through a lot of the reviews. Some of the reviews are amazing. I don't think I've shared them with you guys.
No.
I need to give you access to them. Some of them are so cool. Just the nicest words. So thank you to everyone who does leave those reviews. That does really help us out. So the Shop Stool Podcast is available on iTunes and Spotify and pretty much anywhere that you get your podcast. Joe and Bryan, thanks very much for hanging out, and we will see you guys next time.
See ya.
Cheers, guys.